In 2023, a crack commando unit of retro podcasters joined forces on a panel at LA Comic-Con, but were sent to Comic-Con jail for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped. Today, still wanted by 80s nerds, they are very easy to find. If you have an 80s nostalgia problem, if no one else can help, maybe you can hire the Nightboys.
All right, this is exciting. Martial art madness, 80s Kids Unite style. It is the time of the year where we celebrate all things martial arts from the 80s. It's martial art madness. I am joined, of course, with Corey, Sleazy C, Diallo, the Armageddon. Co-host for the month of $2 late fee, David Ullman. David, we need a tagline for you. David, welcome to the Kumite Ullman.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
And one of the original old school Nightboys who hasn't been on for a minute, but he's back. Paul, welcome to the Paul No Splits London. Is back.
I drive with my knees.
Yes, he drives with his knees and he shifts with
My
his.
car is not fancy.
Don't try that at home, boys and girls.
Please don't.
Takes
Please
lots
don't.
of martial arts training to drive with your knees. I don't recommend driving with your right knee unless don't cross streams. But, left knee, easy. I've been doing it for decades.
So we are doing, this is the first time in a while. There's been 4 of the original 5 Nightboys. Dustin was going to join us and unfortunately could not. He's hoping to soon, but things are still doing a lot with the recovery from the fires. So understandably so, but David's filling in for Dustin. So, David, feel free to interject any sort of snarky comments.
I know I got to ramp that up. That's not in my nature, but I'd like to honor Dustin's spot as an honorary Nightboy here. So,
look, we are going to represent all the Nightboys, and I'm so excited about this topic. Corey, our mutual friend and a Patreon supporter for both Podcasting After Dark and $2 late fee, Robert Ortiz chose said topic for this evening. Would you want to tell everybody what said topic is if they didn't read the show notes?
Yeah, if you're just somehow listening to this when you're mowing your grass or something and just fired it up. And we are talking about our favorite hero and villain karate men from the 80s. And I guess women. Karate women. Could be karate women as well. Karate persons.
From the 80s specifically.
From the 80s. Always from the 80s. This is 80s Kids Unite. It's always from the 80s, baby.
And I will put a little asterisk next to it because Diallo respectfully reached out and said, okay, could we go a little earlier in the decades? As long as they were relevant in the 80s, that's all that matters to us, right?
Yeah.
So we are going to go in a particular order tonight. We're going to run through all the heroes that we celebrate. If for some reason someone has a pick that's already been chosen, we have a backup just in case. But I got a feeling that we are not going to be overlapping. If we do, I'll be surprised. And if we don't cover a particular martial artist from the 80s, I'll be very surprised. I have a feeling that might happen.
One of us will. Now, but specifically we're covering characters. Obviously, martial artists that we love can be playing said characters, but these characters could also be comic book characters. They could be video game characters. They could be anime, manga, whatever. These are all karate persons of all media from the 80s.
Yeah, and we are all children of the 80s. Some are a little bit older or younger. Some just look younger. Let's just jump right into it because there's 5 of us. We got a lot to cover. We got a lot to discuss. Let's do this. Let's have some fun. The order for this episode will be David, Diallo, Corey, And actually, David, Diallo, let's do Paul and then Corey and myself. We'll go in that order. We'll do heroes first, talk a little bit about each one, roundtable discussion, and then we'll go into villains after that. So, David, are you ready to enter the Kumite and to reveal your number one pick for favorite hero of 80s martial arts?
Let me just pull out of the split between the two chairs and tell you I'm ready.
Nice.
David,
However-
who in the pantheon of characters from the 80s, like Corey said, video games, comic books, cartoons, movies, TV, etc., who's your favorite 80s martial art hero?
This is I'm shocked that I'm changing my answer at the last minute, and this is a real challenge to my identity. But something about when you're just like, it has to be the character. It has to be the character.
Yes.
And I was looking at my alternate, and the alternate character is stronger. It is Dalton from Roadhouse.
Wow!
Sleeper
He's a
hit.
legend.
I actually thought of that one. That's funny.
That's a great choice.
That's
That was-
amazing.
I mean, I don't know. It wasn't my pick 5 minutes ago, but once we got into the character, and not the actor martial artist, there's none better, I think, for me.
Can we ask was it originally JCVD, the original pick?
Yeah. I have a JCVD binder. I have a
Amazing.
of clippings from like Inside Karate and stuff.
I love
he's,
that. Oh my god.
One of my favorite entertainers of all time, easily. But
That's like the Dune book that Hodorowski made.
Yeah. Jodorowsky's Dune. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just got to say,
David Ullman's JCVD movie.
Yeah.
don't tease me.
It was huge. It was awesome.
if you're listening to this episode, go over to our YouTube, Podcasting After Dark's YouTube, or $2 Late Fees YouTube. Hit the subscribe button while you're at it too. But check out the video version of this because you'll be able to see some of the props, for example, that David just held up. So David, choosing Dalton is a left field choice. Not a oh my God, why? It's more like, wow, that is a really cool choice. Tell us why. Why is it Dalton?
I think it's just as a character, he has he looms large. He's a legend. Like everybody's heard of him, and he also just kind of, he's got a one name. Like what even is his first name? I can't remember. But
it's a really good question.
So iconic and legendary that, as a character that I just. It hurts my heart in a way, but it's because Van Damme is so dear to me.
Look, it's totally understandable. Really
Dalton
quick,
is the man.
He is the man, and I will give a cheap plug to an episode a couple years ago now, LA Comic-Con. Paul London and myself, Dustin,
Jill Sholin, right?
well, Ken Olin, and then Jill Sholin played Dalton. We did a table read of Roadhouse at LA Comic-Con a couple years ago.
So cool.
And Jill Sholin played Dalton really well, by the way. Ken Olin played Kelly Lynch's character, and Paul, of course, played Sam Elliott's character very well.
Miho.
Yeah.
It's Miho Dalton. That's his name.
Right.
Miho.
Yeah, I believe it's with yes. So I'm going to reserve my comments because we've covered Roadhouse extensively. But Corey, what are your thoughts about Dalton as a martial art pick?
No, I mean, we covered it on the 2 late fee crossover. So I'm just going to use my time to ask David, just what is your favorite JCVD character? Just out of curiosity.
Ooh, yeah, that was
Mine's
where I
Chance
stumbled.
from Hard Target for sure.
Oh, that's hard to argue with.
Yours is
That's
Chance, Corey?
pretty great.
Oh, yeah. My mama took one.
His mama took one. Thank God. Sorry, David, I cut you off, buddy.
Oh no, that's all right. I mean, that is I think the correct answer. I was going to choose Kickboxer as the representation of because for me that's like the quintessential Van Damme movie. The more I thought about from his love of animals, like his brother Kurt, he's says, he's going to be a vet. And just even Van Damme's backstory in that film. It's the one time where he's so specific and truthful about. He's like, I was born in Belgium, but now I live in Los Angeles. It's like there you go. And he's chased by the dog, like Claude Goetz like actually trained him, and all of those little details. Because otherwise it would be Frank Dukes, but Frank Dukes is a real guy, and
Yeah.
So
And then how much of that is real versus
Yeah.
exactly.
Is Frank Dukes his real name?
Yeah.
Is he really a guy?
Does he actually exist? Does he really put up his Dukes? Diallo, how about you? What are your thoughts about Roadhouse Dalton being a martial art master of the 80s?
Real quick, I used to see what's his name, Kurt, the brother in Kickboxer.
Oh, Dennis Alexio.
Dennis Alexio. Is he still in prison? He was in prison recently, wasn't he? Or a while back?
Was he? I didn't know that. I was just about to say I used to see him all the time at the gym back in the day, back when I was in Hawaii.
With the curly mullet all the time. And the mustache.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's the kickboxer guy. I see him all the time. Anyway, awesome. Now that he's in jail, let's not talk about that.
I don't think he's still in jail because I looked him up recently. I check in on the Kickboxer cast from time to time. So I don't,
as you do,
as one common. Does.
Yeah,
I love my Paul's ideas. Like just sitting there, like, let me check in on the cast of this movie now. Where are they at?
I do that all the time. All the time. I have a life.
Where's the cast of Freaky Friday?
Right.
No, anyway, Roadhouse is interesting because like I don't have like a super affinity with the movie. I saw it back in the day, thought it was great, but I could only really remember the scene where he ripped dude's throat out,
Yep.
And then I watched it again some years ago. And when this new one came out what's his name?
Dylan Hall.
Yeah, whatever his name is. Taylor Swift's ex.
Their heat? I'm sensing some heat. You and GJ or JZ, whatever.
It was like, I watched that movie, but then I rewatched. I might have rewatched it with you guys, Zach, and I think Dustin might have been there. I don't remember. Anyways, but I rewatched the original again. And I mean, I actually think both movies are ridiculous. So I like the comparison, like people are like, the new one is so ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, the original is ridiculous too.
Absolutely.
But the original is a step above because of Patrick Swayze. And it's why I actually thought there was a thought in my head about him to include in here. And the thought that came into my head was the way that he's this martial arts dude, but he's like super sensitive and he's like super soft, right?
Yeah.
And he does everything with like this compassion. It's like this over the top compassion, but it's not cheesy, but it is cheesy because he's such a great actor. He's just like, and so I think that's like the difference between the two. Besides the way it's shot. He
can still rip your throat out, but he'll care about you when he does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what it was. Like it lacked like the new one had it had like that modern edge, and Taylor Swift's ex is all like broken down and tired or whatever. But then like Patrick Swayze is just like hey guys, and it's like a evolution of Patrick Swayze through different movies.
Yeah.
So you take like Outsiders, and then you take Red Dawn, and then he moves from there to Ghost. It's like that. He has that same sort of like quality where he's like the alpha, but he's really like kind and compassionate at the same time. But he will rip your throat out if he has to.
If he has to, yeah.
So, anyways, I definitely agree with that pick. So I think it's a
great choice. Paul, how about you? Your thoughts on Patrick Swayze and Roadhouse?
Yeah, no, I love it. I think Patrick Swayze's. I wish he would have done more kind of action martial arts movies. I mean, he does a little bit of martial arts in Point Break, I think, when he saves Johnny Utah from the Chili Peppers and
War Child. Back off, War Child.
Yeah. And isn't Vincent Klein or what's his name?
Yeah, from Cyborg.
Right, yeah. Cyborg, that's the other. Yeah. But yeah, no, I love Roadhouse. Because I like to make everything about me. I met Patty Swayze. She was the dance choreographer on the TV remake for this movie, The Picnic, which I was like an extra in back in Texas, and they were like having us do this box dancing kind of scene, and they're like, "Do you know who the dance choreographer is?" I was like, "That lady over there?" And they're like, "Yeah." They're like, "That's Patrick Swayze's mom." And I met her, and she was so nice. And it turns out she's this really storied dance choreographer in
Wow,
Hollywood.
that's cool.
Yeah. Um,
Is that where he get his dancing background
he
from? Is
he
that
has
where
a dance background. Yeah, like he has a
yeah,
dance background.
yeah,
He has a ballet background. I think he has like some ballet
yeah,
background, which lends itself. Obviously, JCVD is as well.
Right.
Um,
yeah.
I learned ballet. Um,
That's right, kickboxer. There it is again. Three
but
languages.
I love Roadhouse. I love, I mean, that fight scene in particular on the waterfront. I'm blanking on
Marshall T.
Marshall
that.
Teague.
Marshall Teague.
Marshall,
Yeah.
yeah, Marshall Teague is awesome.
Another legit martial artist.
Yeah, he's great. And so David doesn't feel like he totally abandoned JCVD on this choice. I will tie in. So I don't know what the separations are, but I will tie in JCVD to Patrick Swayze and Roadhouse if you like.
Okay.
Oh.
When we get to your pick.
Whenever you want. I just
Okay.
like to show it off.
When we get to your pick, if you want to show off that like a little linkage there. And I do want to shout out Patrick Swayze as your choice, David, because I feel like he made sensitivity cool for a lot of men in the 80s. And he actually
yeah.
broke down a lot of stereotypes for white men, specifically. And I love I love Patrick Swayze for that. I don't know about JCVD, but both can dance their butts off. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
Even the SNL skit that he did, with
Chris
what's
Farley.
his
Chris
name?
Farley.
The
Oh,
dance,
yes.
yeah, Chris
Classic.
Farley, and like he has that like, hey guy, like come on, like he has that like
That's pretty good.
quality to him.
Yeah.
Like it's just we should all be more like him. He's
Yes, I agree. Totally agree.
yeah.
All right.
He's also fantastic in Donnie Darko,
Oh, yeah.
starring Taylor Swift's ex.
Taylor Swift's
Whoa,
ex.
there's your
Yeah.
Uh,
Taylor
crossover
Swift.
connection.
Yeah.
I will shout out
Yeah.
Patrick Swayze does some pretty decent martial art moves in Steel Justice, I believe it, or Steel Dawn. Steel Dawn.
Yeah,
Still
does he have a
Dawn.
sword?
Still Dawn, yeah.
I was trying to find that. Didn't they
Yes.
just release that? Like Vestron Video just put out a Blu-ray of that or something?
Yeah, a couple years ago, Steel Dawn came out
Yeah.
on Blu-ray.
That's,
I was frantically trying to scroll through my phone to find the name of that movie because I could picture the poster in my head, but not the name.
Cool poster, decent movie.
I remember watching when I was a kid.
Yeah. Diallo, what's your pick for martial art hero from the 80s?
My pick for a martial art hero from the 80s. I actually had an original, but I made a last minute select, just like my man David. I'm pivot to Elektra from Daredevil, originally appearing in Daredevil comic books, went on to doing her own thing. Has never been fully shown in the movies. I almost jumped out of the plane that I saw Elektra on a flight one time. I was like, I'm not going to watch this. But yeah, she just to me, I don't know. It was in that. It was like early '80s. It was like ninjas all started popping up and everything. But she obviously being a woman, being like a strong woman, and she had like the size, and it was just like is that how you pronounce them? Size,
Yeah.
and then
yeah.
she and like just the romantic arc that she had, the tragic arc that she had with Daredevil was just to me like iconic. I think it's probably still one of the best Daredevil story arcs that's appeared, and I think they keep trying to do it whenever they make a movie that shows you that's the most iconic arc. So yeah, Elektra Nachios, I think is how you say her last name.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Great character. And then her weapons started being seen with the Ninja Turtles. So
Wow. Okay,
yeah.
so Diallo, really quick. So when did her character, you might have already said this, but when did her character like officially debut? Like when can you tell us that?
Yeah, so it was in I believe it was in Daredevil. It was like 1982, and there was this arc in Daredevil where he gets reunited with his lost love with just Elektra. She's also like an assassin. Like when they were in college together, it was like one thing, but then she's become an assassin since, and
Okay.
so ends up being at odds with her. While there's this other character, Bullseye, I think, and I might be conflating the movie, which is like that's why I hate the movie so much. But
Hey, man, Colin Farrell.
Hey,
I mean, he actually was.
and the movie gave us Evanescence, what Bring Me Back to Life or
Oh yeah,
whatever.
that's right.
Oh,
That was
really?
right.
Really?
She was like doing her fight sequence and they were playing Evanescence. Oh man, I hate that movie so much. Anyway. Yeah, it's just it's such a great she said I mean she's a great character. They brought her back and then like this isn't in the 80s, but they brought her back in a Wolverine agent. There was like a series called Wolverine Agent of Shield. It was in Wolverine and the sub chapter, whatever it was, Agent of Shield. And I think, oh no, it was a different artist, but she kind of came back and was like kind of paired up with Wolverine for a little bit while he
Okay.
was running around doing shenanigans. So yeah, she's just like, I don't know, she's a great martial arts character, deadly assassin, but yeah.
And that costume is pretty iconic at this point. That red with
Yeah.
like the bands and everything.
Yeah,
I still have that Diallo, how do you pronounce his name? The artist Bill Sienkiewicz.
yeah,
He's
Bill
like
Sienkiewicz, yeah.
okay, yeah, Bill
Yeah.
Sienkiewicz. Yeah, he used to draw those Nick Fury
Yeah.
comics and everything. But I have that image of her like against a white background holding that like gun that's like twice her size, that he painted.
Yeah.
That's kind of like burned into my head of her. But yeah, I remember all the Elektra stuff back in the day. I thought she was cool as hell, and I was reading Marvel comics at the time, although I wasn't reading Daredevil, but I did grow up, reading Marvel comics. Of course, she kind of crossed my path and everything. I always thought, obviously, she was hot as
Yeah.
hell and badass chick and everything like that. So I was like, oh, cool. But I didn't like Daredevil, so
Yeah, she had her own miniseries. Yeah, I didn't really I mean, it was like Daredevil was a character I liked, but I never really like read either,
yeah, I liked him in like when he was like a guest in a comic or something. I'd be like, oh, that's cool, Daredevil. I like him, but then
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna go pick up his comics.
So
Yeah, I used to
I don't
like
care
to
about a
draw
blind
him
guy.
a lot, but I never, yeah, I like to draw him, but I never, like, there's a couple comics I have, but like a little bit later, he had some really good comics. But yeah, actually, my friend it was like an Elektra miniseries, and that's where I kind of really got introduced. And she was like fighting all these
Yeah,
ninjas, and
that was the Frank
there's like this
Miller one. Yeah.
immortal.
cool.
Yeah, there's like this immortal ninja that she had to fight, and I remember like, no one could beat him, and then she beat him by cutting off his head, and it was like, oh, so that's probably where Highlander came from. Um,
Diallo, have you ever seen Ninja 3, the Dominion?
Domination?
Domination
I've heard
Domination.
with Lucinda Dickey.
I've heard of it.
Dude, you'd
Yeah,
love
I've
it.
not seen it.
You
It's
know what,
amazing.
Paul, would you say if we were casting 80s actors to play these Marvel characters in the 80s, would you say that Lucinda Dickey would have been a great Elektra?
No.
No?
No, he's like, no.
I'm sorry. I love Ninja 3, but no, I don't know. I think I'd be like on Shabadoo's opinion at this point where he's like, who is this girl coming in here trying to
Paul, did you read are you familiar with Elektra from the 80s and Daredevil?
No, I was gonna ask Diallo when she debuted. I know that he probably just said that.
82, he
but
believes, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
82,
early
okay,
80s.
so
Yeah.
see that I did not grow up with the electric character. I think partly because at that point I was 2 when she debuted. I
Fair,
wasn't
fair.
quite reading yet, but but I got into G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe cartoon, and so I was actually introduced to this character that I think they created that was inspired by Elektra called Jinx.
Mhm.
Definitely. She had size
Yeah,
also. She also had
yeah,
size.
she had size. She was all in red.
A
Mhm.
really good
So
connection.
yeah, that's kind of what I always thought whenever I saw Elektra afterwards. But then it wasn't until I saw her last name was one of my favorite party snacks, right? Who doesn't love nachos? And I was like, oh, she's more ethnic or Colombian or something. She's not, or
Greek,
I
I
don't know
think. Yeah. I
what
think
is she?
Greek.
Yeah.
I think she's
Greek
Greek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
nachos? Is there nachos? Nachos.
I
It
it's
should be
yeah,
like
it's
Melchias or something. It should be.
All I got to say to that is
it's not
Yasu.
NACHOS.
But I didn't mind the Jennifer Garner stuff. I mean, sorry, apologies.
Whatever. It's
Hey, you like what you like, even if it's
exactly.
terrible.
Yeah, right. David, did you grow up with Elektra, knowing who Elektra was in the 80s?
I did not. My first introduction was that early 2000s maligned Daredevil movie, which I actually do. I'm not going to say it's good, but I have a fondness for it.
It's that song, I'm telling you.
Yeah, and
You
I
know
get a
what?
kick out of Affleck
We're
doing
gonna
his
skip you,
Affleck
Corey.
nonsense.
Corey's gonna get skipped because he likes
That Daredevil thing, real quick, is that two of my old wrestling buddies are the henchmen for Kingpin at the door. Um, yeah, Tom Howard and Horseshoe, or he wrestled as Luther Reigns.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah.
those are the two guys at the door when you walk, when you know at Kingpin's lair. They're like his two bodyguards or
Oh,
something.
that's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Now we got a reason to go back and rewatch it. Like we
You
didn't
know,
need a reason to begin with.
that and one thing I think Bear is mentioning because of the no retreat, no surrender sort of focal point of the martial arts madness.
Yes.
There's that scene in No Retreat, No Surrender where he's kicking the bags. So like there's the bags hanging all over the room.
Yes.
There's a scene in that Daredevil movie where Elektra is doing pretty much the
Oh,
same thing with
totally.
the
That's the
size
part
and
with
the song.
Evanescence.
Yeah, that's the Evanescence part. It's the best part of the movie.
Oh my God, you
Yeah.
guys.
That's
You're killing
awesome.
me. You're
Love
killing me
that
right
song.
now.
Love Evanescence.
You're killing me.
Did you ever hear the Kids Bop version of it?
No, yes,
Oh
I
no.
did. Yes.
No.
I know Fern knows it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna jump into Paul's
Zach's like,
pick.
this is going off the rails.
Paul, would you please bring us back to light?
Well, hold on, though,
And-
Zach. We didn't hear your thoughts on
Bring
Elektra.
us
What,
back to like
did you grow up with Elektra, Zach?
Okay, so I will say this. I was not familiar with her until unfortunately the movie that we've all pretty much covered at this point. But my brother was a big Daredevil fan. He liked the comic book. He read the comic book, so I read his comic books. I actually really love that figure, the Daredevil figure that came out back in the day is like basic as it was. I just loved his little points on his head. I thought that was cool. Anyways, I think I love that Diallo chose this pick because it's a representation of, martial arts is so broad in the 80s. It's not just a guy who both of these are so out of the ordinary, I think. For our first two picks. So I'm really
More
excited.
left field than David.
I know, I love it. I love it. So Paul, what is your choice for 80s martial art hero?
I feel all boring now.
No, because nope, there is no boring.
Okay, well, I had three. I had one originally, and then you talked to me about the backups. I was like, well, this is an automatic backup, and it gets my backup villain in the same movie. Perfect. And then I thought, wait a minute, who am I?
You got to go with your pick.
I gotta go with who I was really inspired by.
Yep.
To the point that I even styled my hair like this.
Right.
I'm gonna have to go with Andras Jones as Rick Johnson, Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
Nice. That
nice.
is a
It is a really great pick. Again, these first three picks are blowing me away. So, you styled your hair like the said actor, said
He was
character.
like, yeah, he would. Well, Andros Jones, I'm just a fan of him in particular. One of the times I had moved back to Los Angeles, I slipped into his DMs and was like, "Hey, I just want to say you're here," because he followed me back and like whatever. So then I was like, "Well, I guess I have some right to message him." Like, uh, and so I was just saying like, "Oh, I always loved your work, and especially Nightmare 4 or whatever." And he actually wrote back and he was like, "Good luck in the Dream Factory," and he was
Oh, that's
Oh,
cool.
cool.
that's
yeah, I
nice.
just thought that's really cool. But yeah, I just his terrible jobbery death notwithstanding, which I
Yeah.
think anybody who delves into that can see that I don't think it had anything to do with budget. Even though the original thought for his death was uh, that he was gonna like have some big elaborate thing, and I don't know. But then there's the rumors that Rennie Harlan was banging his girl on the side. And I mean, he is
Oh
the
my.
only cast member to have not been invited to the wrap party or the
Oh,
Yep.
screening. So like that, and he didn't get a crew jacket. So like he got the short end of the stick for what I thought was the best character in the franchise. Even though he only lasted one picture, but I thought his love for his sister, um, especially as they were fighting through like an alcoholic father,
Right.
and then um, which I also really liked the arc for the father as well because he recovers in part 5,
Right.
and then when she's having a baby. Or at least she's pregnant. He makes that line about it'd be nice to hear a boy running around the house. Oh, I'm gonna get teary. It's so sad. Oh,
Yeah. No. No. Go.
and I loved that character, and I loved like I was that kid, doing martial arts in my garage. I had the Sho Kosugi poster that's in the background that he had,
Yep.
so I was like, we have the same poster.
So cool.
So yeah, I loved that character. I loved him, and I think when you're upset when a character dies, I think that's a real testament not just to the writing of the character, but more so to the performance of the actor.
Right.
Because usually the writing isn't that good, especially in like what a fourth entry of a film.
Yeah.
It's gonna get watered down. So just the way that I just believed him. I believed everything he said, and I believed his love for his sister, and then how he taught her to like stand up for herself. And then she became pretty much the the most lasting figure. She wasn't Nancy Thompson. She gets offed in 3. Sorry. But it was
Spoiler.
Alice Johnson is like kind of the ultimate final girl of the Nightmare series. Um, and she got, part of that was from getting that strength and that ability to fight through her brother.
Right.
So yeah, I love that character. Anytime I throw something in and I make it, I'll say like the swish, kill the fish. There's so many lines, just he has just very, very memorable character. And so yeah, that's my pick.
I love that. I love that. David, I have a lot to say, but David, oh, we
Oh,
lost
we
Paul.
lost it.
Oh no, he'll be back.
He was like, "I dropped the mic. I'm out. There you
I'm
go."
out. Yeah. So, David,
And I'm out.
David, until Paul comes back in, please tell us your thoughts on Rick from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4.
Oh, what a great choice.
Yeah,
I
agreed.
actually did not. I only saw that movie in the last few years. I didn't see. I was just watching in the 80s. I was watching Van Damme movies on repeat. I think so. I didn't. There's so much I missed, and so yeah, I was working through the Nightmare movies, and I didn't recognize the name. But as soon as you showed that picture, I'm like, oh yeah, and I remembered all those great scenes.
Right.
So I'm on board, especially with his reasoning. To this day, I think I might style my hair after like I think I got like a Chad from Double Impact thing going on today. I mean, I'm always thinking about that when I'm getting ready in the morning.
I
So I
mean,
love that.
when we get to my pick, a lot of it has to do with you idealize these characters. It's the character, it's not the actor, because maybe the actor is super cool in real life. Maybe they're a total jerk in real life. Who knows? But the character, or in the case of Diallo, is the comic book character. It's like you
Yeah.
idealize that one. So, yeah, I mean, look, we'll get to mine in a second. But Diallo, what are your thoughts on Rick in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, directed by Rennie Harlan?
I don't really, yeah, I don't really have any thoughts. I can't, I don't, I think the last time I saw the movie was in 1988 when it came
Yeah,
out.
when it came out, right?
Yeah, and I actually, I can't really say like my remembrance of it was like I didn't really like it, but it's not. It probably has not to do so much with the movie as I really loved part three, like to where I watched it a billion times.
Yep.
He wasn't in that one, right?
No.
I
No, he
can't
was
remember.
not. He was not.
Yeah. So I watched that one a billion times, so I felt let down by the next movie because it's sort of by the nature of them having to continue things that kind of ruined what I thought was like a perfect like movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I've never really watched it since. So couldn't really I don't really I have nothing to add to this conversation.
I think you just added something that I'm going to talk about in a moment. But Corey, what are your thoughts about Rick in Nightmare 4?
Yeah, I'm kind of on Diallo's tip there. I watched it a few times when I was a kid. Obviously, whenever I do a franchise watch through of that once every 10 years, I'll of course watch part 4. It's not one of my favorite ones, but that being said, he is my favorite character from that movie. Anytime I watch it, I do like him the most. I do think his death is kind of sad because it's like, Freddy's invisible. But
Right.
then on the flip side, I actually appreciate the fact that Freddy kills him with his glove, because by part 4, I'm not tired of the dream kills, but at the same time I'm like, I want to see him kill somebody with his damn glove. That's
Right.
kind of
That's the
why I
point,
like
right?
yeah, that's kind of like why I like part 1 the best.
Yeah.
So because he actually just kills people with his gloves in that, or it's not as confabulous as all the other ones. So
Ooh.
so part 4, not one of
That's
my
a yeah,
favorites.
I think that's a word. That's a
Yeah, yeah.
word. That's a
No.
bar.
So, but part 4, not one of my favorites, but he was my favorite actor in, or my favorite character in part 4, and probably my favorite death, but not my favorite fight scene in part 4.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I will wrap up my thoughts about Rick in the idea of Nightmare on Elm Street. I have a very love-hate relationship with that franchise because of characters like Rick that I thought were really cool, and then suddenly they're just killed super quickly. I'm in the same boat with you. Diallo Part 3 is my favorite of the franchise. But unfortunately, many of these characters felt disposable in the movies because suddenly they were just gone. And you're like, but that's a really cool character. And that really frustrated me about it. That's why in Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th, when Tom Matthews' character was brought back, Tommy Jarvis, I was like, oh, they're bringing a character back that you thought was gone. It's like it doesn't always have to be about the villain. It can be about the hero as well. And I thought Rick was a character that they disposed of, but he had a very important significance to the overall film that obviously Paul said so eloquently, and I really appreciate. Clearly, he loves that movie, and he's having technical difficulties, so he may or may not join us.
We may not ever see him again.
No, we will, because Territory Marks has to record later this month. But
We better see him again.
but Corey, please reveal your choice for hero of 80s martial arts.
Yeah, so I had 3 picks that I was just kind of going back and forth on. Paul actually said 2 of the picks just randomly, in conversation. Sho Kosugi and Jinx. I was leaning on both of them. But I kind of want to curate my list for Robert Ortiz, since this is his suggestion. So I'm going to go with one of my 3, and they're all kind of like together. There's not like a 1, 2, or 3 type of thing. And I'm going to go with Kenshiru, the man who can hit all your pressure points and explode your head, from the anime series and manga series Fist of the North Star.
Wow.
I grew up. Now I know that. I mean, he was. Yeah, there you go. He was. Obviously, he originated in the '80s in Japan. Obviously, I think the I had the Game Boy game that came out. It was like 1990, and then
Yeah.
I think so it was like right on that cusp. But since I was going to comic book conventions and stuff, and I was frequenting comic book stores, I saw a lot of the manga, and they'd have bootlegs of the anime, the TV series, and then the movie and everything. And I just love the fact that you could hit their pressure points and then the person's head would like explode. And I just thought that was just like
Amazing.
the most amazing thing I'd ever seen, especially since like at that point, I think it went from, obviously I'm living with G.I. Joe and no one ever dies, and He-Man and Thundercats and no one ever dies. Then, we talk about the fact in Macross and Robotech, you actually, it's not like graphic, but you see Veritex getting destroyed, and the pilot is getting killed. And then it jumps, and for me in my childhood, then jumps to Fist of the North Star, where it's like, oh my God, you can draw people's heads explode, So it's just like, oh my God. So I kind of again wanted to curate, hopefully Robert Ortiz, I'm fairly certain he's a Fist of the North Star fan. So let's give Kenshiro some love. Plus, he was also kind of like designed to look like Mad Max from Road Warrior, because he's kind of got that shoulder pad and everything. So, and in the world is post-apocalyptic. So at the same time, like I was a big post-apocalyptic kid. I loved that subgenre that was around in the 80s, and specifically because I love Mad Max and Road Warrior and everything. So I was like, oh my God, like, so the cartoon or the manga, Fist of North Star, is post-apocalyptic. So that's check one. Check two, he's got like the shoulder pad like Road Warrior does, and then check three, heads explode. So what more do you want when you're like a 10-year-old kid?
Well, before we get David and Diallo's thoughts on this, I have to say, again, another choice that is not expected. But if you know us, if you know the Night Boys, and David, you are official Night Boy. As long as you come on the show, you are like in the family.
You're a day for night boy.
Yeah, you're a day for Night Boy.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
I just love that these are like such left field choices. And, up until this point, haven't gone with Chuck Norris or JCVD or Steven Seagal. Even though I think Above the Law came out in 88 or 89. So yeah, he's an 80s
88.
actor.
Yeah.
Jackie Chan. I just to list a few, Sammo Hung. Like, we're not going with the typical choices, which are, again, if that's your choice, that's great too. But I just love that this is so different. I love it. David, what are your thoughts on Fist of the North Star's Kenshiro?
I'm unfamiliar. I mean, I've heard of Fist of the North Star, but I've never actually engaged with it in any of the mediums. So I have to defer, but I love it as a choice. It sounds very cool.
Yeah, man, you can watch the anime that came out, I think like 86 or 87. It came to the US like in 91. But if you watch that, you kind of get the entire story in
Yeah.
one 90-minute go, and you get all the violence, because it was made into a TV series that wasn't as violent as the manga, but the animated movie is much more. But whatever you do, do not watch the live action movie that came out like, what was exactly, like 94, 95?
Save that 95. Save that till we get to my thoughts.
I had that
God.
in I've had that in my list for years, so I'm glad you told me that. It's like Gary Daniels, right?
Hold
Or
on, we'll get to
something.
that. We'll get to that. Hold on. Diallo. What are your thoughts on Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star?
I don't have like specific thoughts, but I think Fist of the North Star was like, especially back in like the day before you could just turn on the TV and anime would just start flowing through the screen. That was one of the iconic like ones that everybody talked about. So like I watched it, but I also didn't like, I don't know, don't really actually remember much about it except for like the hyper violent nature. And
Right.
actually it's funny because I kind of had conflated that one with I didn't realize it was from the 80s actually, because I didn't, I started really being able to watch a lot of that genre of anime in the early 90s. So I didn't really realize that was from the 80s, because I kind of conflated it with Ninja Scroll, Jubei from Ninja
Right, yes.
Scroll, which
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was like
yeah.
93.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, Yeah, but I mean, great pick. I mean, that's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you picked some anime because I know you don't even really like anime, right?
I
So,
know, I know. And again, I was like, let me curate this for Robert a little bit. And it was one of the
yeah,
few anime that I actually did watch, back in the
yeah,
day. So I was like,
yeah.
okay, this is like for me, sort of the pantheon. It was like this, Akira, Vampire Hunter D, Ninja Scroll and stuff. But yeah, Fist of North Star was there. And real quick, I gotta say, when my wife and I were over in Japan last spring, a year ago, like the pachinko places, those pachinko
Hmm.
games that they have. I
Yeah.
a lot of them had a Fist of North Star theme, like almost all of them did. So
Mm.
I was like,
Cool.
is Fist of North Star still relevant, or did they just easily license that out for these pachinko games? But it was like it was everywhere. Like he was in pachinko form, and I'm like, okay, Fist of the North Star is back, sort of, I guess,
Sort of, yeah.
sort of.
Well, I would say it is because one of the numerous toy sites on Instagram posted a picture of a Kenshiro figure that just came out, and it's
Oh, cool.
very highly detailed and all articulated and all that good stuff. It looks very cool. My thoughts are, I love the pick. I love the character. I had the video game. Wished it was better than it actually was.
That's the best we
Read
had.
Right. Read the manga, watched the cartoon. Then the atrocious movie came out in 1995, which I was so stoked for because Gary Daniels did play Kenshiro, and it was a bomb. It was terrible. It definitely doesn't hold up, even from like a nostalgic fun standpoint. You watch and you're just like, this is god awful. Like Costas Mandalore and Malcolm McDowell and Chris Penn are in it. And it's like
And
got these,
Clint Howard's in it, I think.
yeah, very
The
interesting.
obligatory Clint Howard, cameo.
Clint, I'll take any role if you pay me, Howard. Yeah, which is fine. Hey, no judgment there. I would do the same. But yeah, and it's directed by Tony Randall, who did Hellbound Hellraiser 2, which is
Yeah.
my favorite of the Hellraiser franchise. But you know what? Like Gary Daniels embodies Kenshiro. He's perfect. That is perfect casting for that character, and it was a major letdown. So I would live vicariously through that character, draw him all the time.
Yeah.
I'd love to draw him, and I love just that attitude, the idea of like blowing somebody up.
Blowing up their head.
I'm bringing Paul back in.
Paul's
Paul is
back, baby!
Paul's back for my pick. So,
Well, can we
Guess
throw
who's
my
back?
pick real quick to see if he
Back
ever watched
again.
Fist of the North Star?
yeah, we'll ask him
Oh,
really
guess
quickly
who's
when he
back?
pops on. If he pops on,
Paul's
because
your friend.
there he
There
is.
we go.
All right.
I'm back.
I apologize. Kruger did not actually. Maybe it might have been Rennie Harlan did not like me mentioning any of that.
I think it was Rennie Harlan.
Paul, you missed my pick, so let me get your thoughts.
Yes, I
Paul,
want
were you
everyone.
ever-
I want to rehash real quick of what I missed during the commercial break.
You just missed Corey's pick. Corey's pick was what, Corey?
Paul, did you ever watch Fist of the North Star back in the day?
Oh, Gary Daniels, man, dude, my friend wrote that. Pete Atkins.
Well, you missed us. You missed us talking about the movie. I'm specifically talking about the anime, not the live action. I'm sorry. and Paul, you're not going to want to go back and listen to what we had to say about the live
No,
action.
it's okay because I admittedly I'm not an anime guy. I just manga all this stuff, and I take a lot of offense to it really because all these young wrestlers nowadays, they aren't watching the greats. They aren't watching the Flairs, the Hennigs, the Lawlers. They aren't watching the Funks. They aren't watching the Von Erichs. They aren't watching the greats.
I actually hate that about when they do Superman now. Like they take all these elements from Goku and put that. I hate it. I can't stand it. Like,
Ah,
Superman came 50 years before that. Like
I will keep the martial art theme going and wrap up the hero portion of this because we still got villains, y'all. We still got our go through our villains.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
My choice for my favorite martial art hero from the 80s is Alex Grady from Best of the Best. Alex Grady hailing from Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm wearing the shirt that Preserve Dragons made. It is called the $2 late fee Best of the Best tee. If you go on Preserve Dragons website or Instagram, you'll see a picture of Eric Roberts, aka Alex Grady, wearing said t-shirt. And Best of the Best, Alex Grady, could have gone with Tommy Lee, but I'm going with Alex Grady because one, in the movie, he portrays, a working man who is just trying to provide for his son and his mother, and he's a single dad, and he's just trying to do the right thing in life, and he gets this second chance to basically, do what he's really born to do, which is martial arts, and he perseveres through unbelievable challenges throughout. In fact, including getting his shoulder popped out, and of course the infamous scene of pop it, Tommy, pop it back in. Um, Alex Grady's not afraid to cry. He's not afraid to tell people that he loves them. He is a embodiment of what I think a man should be, a human should be. He's just a good guy, and he plays a mean air trumpet as well, which which I was able to do with Eric Roberts in studio when I interviewed him, and of course we did that with our man Corey from Dreamscape.
Peter Jason, yeah.
Peter Jason, rest in peace.
Big rips to Peter Jason.
Yeah, who both do a great air trumpet. But Alex Grady is my choice from Best of the Best. I cry every time he cries. I feel every time he feels. I want to jump all over, but really quickly, Paul, what are your thoughts about Alex Grady from Best of the Best?
I love it. What an amazing another sleeper hit. You know what I mean? I really dug it. Anytime you say Alex Grady, I think of two things. I think of Pop It, Tommy Pop It, right? What you're talking about. And I think about how much I hated Walter, his stupid son. Oh my God, that kid was so annoying. I didn't give two shits if he died in the hospital or not. I was like, you're gonna leave the Olympic trials for this? It's probably not even your own kid. That didn't look like you. And so, yeah, I have a deep disdain for Walter.
Well, I think that's fair to say. Diallo, what are your thoughts about Alex Grady, not his son, his conniving son?
Walter.
Alex Grady from Best of the Best. Diallo, you and I have a history of this movie, but what's your feeling about Alex Grady?
Yeah, I mean, you know, first of all, we do have a history, and it's like it's a little contentious, just a tad, because I actually prefer Best of the Best 2 over Best of the Best 1.
I know you do.
But I live in a world where, I guess because I'm a Libra, like I can like things equally, so I don't put one down just because I like another, right?
Yeah.
So I remember I watched Best of the Best 1 a million times and loved it every time. But I mean, Tommy greater than but anyways,
I mean, he is, but you know.
And I also feel like you're a little racist. No, I'm just kidding. That's just a joke. That was a joke.
Yes, I agree.
No, but he's like, I mean, he's great. That's a great pick. And again, like, as you were saying, it's like outside of like the bounds of everything that I actually like, all my impulses about people that I was gonna pick, and I kind of went with different things, and that's definitely in there.
Yeah.
And again, like the first movie is just great. It's just a great movie.
Yeah.
It's not as good as 2, but it's actually a really good movie. So
it's different. It's a different kind of vibe. It's a different vibe.
If you made me sit down and watch both, I would love both.
Well, that's going to happen then. It's going to happen.
Part 3. Watch part 3.
Sure, we'll do all 4. David, what are your thoughts?
Go ahead. All that advice. Yeah, I actually have only seen the first, but I do own it on VHS.
Look at you, as you
love it.
I remember that case. Oh man,
I remember that car.
Yeah, hold it up.
Yeah. Burned into my brain.
There it is.
Yeah.
You can see the emotionality on his face, if that's a word. I borrowed that from.
I mean, sure. Why not?
I agree with everything you said. Like I cry too. If you don't cry at Best of the Best, I don't know. There's something wrong with you, I think, as a human.
I agree. And
I know all I ever want to know about you. Get out of town.
Well, and you guys can go back into our archives. I believe it's a Patreon episode, but David joined us for a Patreon Martial Art Madness episode, I think,
Oh,
a
yeah.
year or two ago, and or a trivia. It was a trivia contest, and recreated a famous line from Best of the Best.
Yeah.
And doing his
Yeah.
best version of Eric Roberts. Speaking of people who don't often cry, but maybe did cry when they watched said movie, Corey, what are your thoughts about Alex Grady? Best of
Yeah,
the
no, it's
Best.
true. I hate crying. Crying terrifies me. Like I am scared of crying. I wonder if that has anything to do with my father.
Of course
So
it does.
of course it does. So my whole
Of course
entire
it
life,
does.
I hate crying. I don't do it. All my wife wants to do is see me cry because she wants to see the emotion, you know? And but anyways, Zach, we did a watch list with Dustin, and
Last
I had
year.
a very weird day where I watched three movies that had not. I watched Deep Cover, Best of the Best, and something else that was equally different, but it was all for the watch list.
Yeah.
It was the first time I ever saw Best of the Best, and it was last year. And like I said, it was in the middle of this weird marathon where I loved every movie but differently, and I ugly cried during Best of the Best. So we're talking midday, it's noon. I'm sitting on my couch. Thankfully, my wife was not home, and I was sitting there ugly crying at Best of the Best. And I was like, where the hell has this movie been my entire life? And my biggest regret in life is seeing Best of the Best for the first time at the age of 46 at the time.
Hey,
So
Wait,
look,
can we ask? I mean, I love you. I love your vulnerability. It's beautiful. Let's keep it going, baby. Do you mind me asking what scene in particular, like you were like, fuck, I can't help it. Like,
it was the put it back in, the emotion that Eric Roberts had, you know. But then I
Yeah.
also had some residual cries at the end when the other team, you know, kind of did
Yeah,
the whole
that's the
thing with
part
the
that
other team.
gets me.
Yeah, and that's what
Yeah.
I was like,
time.
I was like, not again.
he's like, I will be your brother.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the part that
dude.
gets me every time. I
Yeah.
got chills thinking
Yeah.
about it right now. Actually,
But
me too.
Eric Roberts' emotion when he's like, you know, I can, you know, put it back in. I was like, oh my God, this guy, he's
it
not a
back in.
joke. Like Eric Roberts, not a freaking joke. You know, that like I feel like in the mid 2000s, it sort of was like, oh, Eric Roberts, B movie actor. But I was like, this dude is amazing.
no, I mean, the outside of the character, his performance in Best of the Best, he's by far, well, you're joined with James Earl Jones and Sally Kirkland as well. Also amazing actors in their own right, who Sally Kirkland would do things later on that you're like, I don't, what are you doing? Anyways, he
Who
does.
were the other karate guys? I'm sorry to cut you off. I think they did sure. I know Chris Penn. I mean, rest in
Chris
peace. He was
Penn,
incredible. Oh, great. The cowboy, right? Who is
Yeah.
that guy? There was like two guys. One of them looks like almost like Andrew McCarthy. It's not him, but
Well, no, so
Virgil.
Best of the Best was, you know, besides Chris Penn, who also was equally great, you had John Dye. John Dye was a regular, I believe, on that show Touched by an Angel. And then you had David Agresta, who played Sonny Grosso. He was the other martial artist who I believe was a legit martial artist who didn't really do much after that. I just love that he was from Detroit. Yeah. But I will say, you know, Alex Grady watching his son ride his bike by himself and going, I'm doing it. And he goes, I know. That's just that scene gets me, and it got me when I was 14 years old watching this movie, or 13 or whenever it was, because it came out in 1989. Anyways,
oh wait, Walter's in that scene, isn't he?
yeah, he is. Sorry, I mean, you know, as annoying as Walter can be, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I will say though that the emotion
Like a
that
training wheels.
Alex shows to his child is very relatable now in my older ages.
No, of course. I'll back off.
So back off, man. All right, let's switch gears, because for every yin, there's a yang. For every hero, there is a villain. So let's talk about our top five. Well, our top five. Let's talk about our favorite villain from 80s martial art movies, or from 80s martial arts in general. Thank you, Robert Ortiz, for the broad stroke of the pen. David, who is your favorite? Let's start with you, David. Who is your favorite 80s martial art villain?
Okay, so for this one, I'm going to do an inverse of what happened for my hero pick. For my hero pick, I had one in my heart, but I had to go with the kind of what I felt was the correct answer for the character. This one, I feel like there is a correct answer for the character who rules, but there is a villain from an 80s martial arts film that I, to this day, as a man in my mid 40s, sometimes have nightmares about. And so I felt I had to pick him. He has come up already today. I don't know about the best, but the character haunts me, and that is from the much maligned 1989 Jean-Claude Van Damme sci-fi kick 'em up.
Ah,
Oh,
Fender Tremolo from
Dude.
Cyborg.
he was on my
Wow.
short list. He was on my short
Wow.
list, dude.
Scares the crap out of me
Nice.
to this day.
Great pick. Great. I mean, oh my God. I'm sorry. Keep
Go-
going.
go
I
ahead,
have
Court.
so many
Yeah.
things to say.
yeah. We'll go
Oh,
now.
no, it's all right. I could talk endlessly about. I have done like a 2.5 hour podcast episode a few years ago on Cyborg, and I know you guys hate Cyborg, so I think
But
I'll
I
just
didn't
cut
hate
my
Cyborg when I was
comments
a
there.
kid. That's the thing. I didn't hate it when I was a kid. It was only when I got older and rewatched
What
it.
you hate it now?
I don't
Just
love
get
it.
him
I
off.
don't
Cut
love
him
it.
off.
I don't love it.
And his feed now.
Well,
No, Zach doesn't need. Zach's like, I'm not saying anything now.
no, I don't think Cyborg is not
It's
overall.
the slowest of his early canon.
Yeah.
Like characters. When we're
Yeah.
talking about characters,
However, if you're looking at David as our reference point, I'm sure he'll know all this stuff, but Albert Pune is a bizarre genius, rest in peace.
Yeah.
yeah.
And the fact that Cyborg was birthed out of the aborted Spider-Man and Master of the Universe
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
films,
Right.
Yeah.
just so epic. The fact that he wrote the rough treatment. What was the original title? It wasn't Sliders. It was something like that. Slinger.
Yeah.
Slinger. Yeah.
And then named all these villains after guitars. You know what I mean? The fact that, Blade's chainmail is, it's the same outfit. It's the same costumes.
Blade,
it's just
Blade
so
from
good.
Masters of the Universe, of
Yes,
course. Yeah.
Anthony DeLongis, responsible for all that incredible Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman whip work and Batman Returns.
And a Roadhouse connection as well, because
he was in Roadhouse. He was the one that drove, I think, the big monster truck in it.
Oh, that's insane!
Yeah, Paul.
Oh,
So your feelings about Fender in particular from Cyborg?
I thought he was awesome. I thought, here's a villain who doesn't have to yell. Like, this was one of the first villains, I would say, next to Darth Vader, even though Darth Vader is a completely different type of villain in that they had, I don't know, I kind of liken it in wrestling sense to like The Undertaker. Like, they just had this, this really stoic power that was steeped in like silence, and their henchmen were loud and fast. But it was like he was such a villain that he would just come in to do the frosting on the cake.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
He was such a villain. He wasn't gonna bake that damn thing himself. Like, you know what I mean? But he would just come in and get the glory as the villain. I mean, he was just, there's the thing. I think, is it the well?
Yeah, making the daughter hold the barbed wire, so good. I mean,
it's just
like seriously, like that movie was my childhood. I watched it so much.
I think that's real reminiscent of Lee Van Cleef with harmonica.
Oh, totally.
In Once Upon a Time, you know what I mean? Because you're making the sibling.
Oh, you mean Henry Fonda? Henry Fonda.
I'm sorry, Henry Fonda. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wrong villain of the West of the Spaghettis.
It's okay.
But yeah, Henry Fonda, making the sibling almost inadvertently be responsible for their own family's death. Anyways, yeah.
It's a great heel. It's a great heel move for sure.
And that was the reference. Yeah.
I'm totally gonna do that.
You should. I think Paul's got it brewing in his territory mind.
You must hold this dildo to your mouth, and if you let go, they will die. Sorry.
Well, I did not expect you to go there, but Corey, go ahead. Corey, you're chomping at the bit. Corey,
I was just gonna
Wait,
say,
can I want to go before Corey real
okay,
quick. I'm sorry.
you go,
I just
Diallo.
need to
You
do
go.
this.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
go.
I need to do this. I have no real comment, so I'm going to give all my time to Corey.
Wow,
thank
very
you, buddy.
generous.
Fields his time.
Corey, you got 3 minutes.
I just wanted to clarify. I loved this movie as a kid. It was this and Hard Target were my two. JCVD is my favorite Karate Man as a kid. Growing up, he was always my favorite. To this and Hard Target are my two favorite movies. But it was one that I just discovered didn't hold up well for me. It's one of the few movies when Zach and I have done podcasting after dark where we usually pick movies that we're like, we love this as a kid. It's one of the few ones, like I can literally count on like 3 fingers, like ones that we watch and I'm like, oh no. Oh no. Like I don't like this, but I wanted to, like, because I loved it as a kid. So at this point, I don't know if I'll like ever rewatch it again, but I'm just going to let it live in my memory that I loved it as a kid. And it's still one of my favorite JCVD movies ever made, even if I don't technically love it now. And I think that's okay. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Do you think one of the things you didn't like about, I mean, is the music part of the problem for you?
Yes.
Because that's
Yes.
part of the problem for me.
Yes.
Yeah, the music, the sort of the pacing of the film is a bit but again, we understand Albert Pune and I love Albert Pune, but kind of give me, what, I'll take Nemesis now over
I like that one too.
I'll take Nemesis too.
And as a kid, I liked Cyborg better than Nemesis, and like I didn't love
Same.
Nemesis as a kid, but I've actually like done a 180 on both of those movies.
What about Night?
Oh yeah,
Knights is good too. I will keep my my thoughts specifically to Fender and not the movie, because I think, Corey, you were in agreement. And if you guys are wondering what we said about Cyborg, go back to our Podcasting After Dark episode where we broke down Cyborg, and it's very fascinating. I think
And we were not kind.
no, but Fender in particular, I think he's a great villain. I think it's a great choice. I did not expect it. Again, all the heroes I think were way out of left field, which is great. And Corey, you kind of said it. Jean-Claude Van Damme, maybe my favorite Karate Man actor of the 80s and 90s, but not necessarily the characters as much, because I think we're feeling the characters. He's a very scary character, Fender, and I think he does some very diabolical things, and he has a very cool look. I'm thinking that's going to play a lot into all our choices, like the look of this villain. I will keep it at that, and I think, David, wonderful choice. Again.
Thank you.
He's the villain in Only the Strong, isn't he? The villain in Only the Strong, too?
He's not. That guy looks like him, though.
He does look like
Oh,
him,
it's not? Oh, my. I thought because it was Sheldon Lettich. Who knows?
No, but there is a connection there. I would not be surprised if he was potentially on a short list of actors to play that role. But Diallo, what is your choice for your favorite villain of martial arts?
Yeah, I had to tap out of that one because I just saw that movie and years ago and hated it immediately, and I never watched it again. So I'm so dismissive. I don't even know who Fender is. So my villain, because 80s for me, obviously I watched movies a ton, TV, but I think it's like a comic book guy. Growing up.
Yeah.
So my villain is another, like, a classic character created by a friend of mine, actually.
Oh.
I can say it's cool that I can say that now. This guy, Deathstroke the Terminator.
Oh, cool.
Deathstroke.
Who originally appeared in Teen Titans, created by Marv Wolfman. And again, probably one of the most iconic story arcs from Teen Titans. He has gone on to be just, I don't know, like kind of like greater than his origins. And he's got actually he's the template for Deadpool, as many people know. Yeah, because Rob Liefeld just stole all of his concepts from other people. Uncreatively stole them. But Deathstroke Terminator. He's my guy. He's he originally appeared against the Teen Titans, but like he's kind of like pitted against like a Batman type level, kind of like the A level. Um, he has kind of like enhanced strength, martial arts. He's just the ultimate fighter, super intelligent. He's another mercenary, except he's mostly stays on the bad side.
Okay.
And it's good times.
Very cool. Very, again, wow. Did not expect that and very much blown away.
Yeah.
David, what are your thoughts on Deathstroke?
I'm unfamiliar, so I will cede my time to the gentleman from Oregon.
Yeah, the gentleman from Oregon, I believe, is going to have a lot to say. Corey, what are your thoughts about Deathstroke?
Actually, I didn't grow up reading Teen Titans. I wasn't a big DC kid growing up, although I probably like DC stuff more now. But my kind of connection to, I mean, I knew who he was, obviously. Diallo, you know how it is. Even if you don't read the comics, if you go to the comic book store, you're gonna, you're gonna know about these characters almost like osmosis.
Yeah.
But I got more familiar with him, I think, during the Arrow, CW Arrow stuff, and then he started
totally
popping
forgot
up
about that.
Yeah. And then he started popping up in the Batman Arkham video games, and and I was like, yeah, he's really cool looking. Although I kind of dig the more modern armor look versus sort of the older look. But yeah, he's a cool character, so I've grown to like him. And I knew who he was when I was a kid back in the 80s, but I didn't read Teen Titans and stuff back then, so I wasn't really as familiar. But yeah, he's a badass now for sure.
Very cool.
Yeah, I totally forgot about the Arrow arc.
Yeah,
that was like the best season. That was like the season that like solidified how great that show was.
Yeah, and he was like sort of that. Wasn't he like his sort of his mentor, and then he was going to turn into. And then you saw there were some hoodwinks and like, oh, this guy's going to be Deathstroke, but then he wasn't, and everything. Cool. But yeah, that was good. That was good shit, man. Zach makes fun of me for watching those shows back in those CW shows, but man, that was like peak TV of CW.
Dude, they were so good when they first were out. Yeah.
I never watched them, but I've always wanted to watch Arrow. I'll always want to check it out. And
Steve Amell's a mark.
He is a mark. He's a big time. Paul, what are your thoughts about Deathstroke from DC?
I like Deathstroke. I wasn't a fan growing up because, and I apologize, guys, I slipped out of comics. Not fully. There was a character named Deathlock. I think he was the cyborg.
Yeah.
He was over in Marvel. Yeah.
And I was a huge fan of Deathlock. So I have several of the toys.
Now you're on the cover of comic books.
Yeah.
Yes, hero of the prophecy.
Not as impressive as either Death. And but yeah, I really liked Deathlock. But then I've been seeing Deathstroke a lot. Like I think there's been a bit of a resurgence, and I think that you see his influence in a lot of different characters. I had no idea that he was. You said kind of like an early template to Deadpool.
Yeah,
that's pretty
he's
rad.
basically.
Like I had no idea.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, like his name's Slade Wilson Slade.
Yeah, and Wade versus Wade Wilson.
Like, yeah. They look the same. When Deadpool first appeared, he was just a mercenary. He wasn't like the character that we know. He didn't become that till later writers. Yeah. So.
Yeah, he wasn't the merc with the mouth right out of the gate. He was more a little bit cooler.
Curious. But is Deathstroke? Does he have that kind of like? I just like I said, I'm not familiar with him character wise.
He's mouthy, but he's not as mouthy as Deadpool. But he still will jabberjaw a lot while he's fighting.
And then I just figured he was like just kind of a mercenary, so I didn't really get the martial arts aspect of him just on seeing the mask. But and I just could briefly see it. But it's the orange and blue, the bicolored mask. Yeah, I love that mask. Yeah. And I used to get them confused. I think that was the thing that also kind of just would throw me off. Was I would like one character, and then I would see a similar character, and I wouldn't know who came first. And I sure as hell didn't want to be, I didn't want to be crisscross to House of Pain.
I will say this. I will say this in regards to Deathstroke, and it's not Greystoke, because I was like Greystoke, Deathstroke, but
Lord of
I'll
Deathstroke.
be stroking.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stroking going on. And I will say
Deathlock fan?
he reminds me of Alley Viper a little bit, from
yeah.
GI Joe, that figure.
Yeah.
I don't know
Mhm.
Deathstroke. However, I've seen him so many times whenever I go in the comic book store, and I always thought he was a cool looking character. And Diallo brings, a level of, knowledge on when it comes to comic books that I can't even touch. So I think that character is super rad. I think it's again another super strong choice that's out of left field. Which I think is synonymous with us. We are deep cuts all across the board. So
Yeah, I'm surprised Storm Shadow didn't make it in any of our heroes.
well, what we haven't Storm
Well,
Shadow
that was
could be-
heroes. Oh no, I meant Snake Eyes. I meant Snake Eyes. in the
I'm not
heroes.
surprised. Well, we'll get to all that in a minute. But Paul, time for you to reveal your favorite villain from the 80s.
This was not a tough one.
No.
Because I was so immediately attracted to the villain, and dismayed with the hero's sudden weight gain returning from Okinawa after a few weeks. And so I had to go with Terry Silver, Tommy St. Griffith from Karate Kid 3 specifically. None of this Cobra Kai
No,
crap.
not Cobra
Where
Kai.
they've watered him down.
Whoa.
They've watered him down.
Whoa.
Yeah. Terry Silver was everything that you wanted in a villain, because he was such a villain, such a heel, that we're talking about this early billionaire, probably in the high millions at this point, but who lives in the Enos house. He lives in the Enos house, okay? So if you don't know what the Enos house is, it's a cultural historical landmark in Los Angeles. It was created and designed, I believe, by Frank Lloyd Wright Jr. It might have been Senior, but Junior might have done the Hollyhock House, which is not too far away. But it was part of their Mayan revival period that they made these homes. And you'll also know the home from House on Haunted Hill and a ton of other films, usually used in horror films. But this was Blade Runner as well. I mean, all Predator 2. I mean, there's such a huge influence.
Westworld,
that Mayan,
recently Westworld.
The Mayan, Mayan revival period. But like that was, Frank Lloyd Wright and his son, but mainly Frank Lloyd Wright. But anyway, so that was something immediate in itself, because you see it so early in the film, and then you have this incredible Bill Conti score, which Terry Silver had his own theme. And, I think that really speaks volumes when you have a character that's so definitive that he has his own theme. It's like, who else can you think of besides Lex Luthor and Darth Vader, for villains that have their own theme? Shout out to March of the Villains, by the way. That's a great song. And rest, Gene Hackman. That's, anyways, that's just, that's a whole other podcast. But, I just love Terry Silver. I thought, what an incredible heel. He's willing to put all these multi-million-dollar deals to dump chloride sludge in Borneo, and hire. And then his full-time goal then becomes revenge.
Right.
Just to
Kicks.
just for kicks, literally and figuratively, but also for his old mom buddy, which, Terry Silver was probably like 14 in Nom compared to Kreese. It's so ridiculous, for how he saved his ass in Nom. And the turtleneck, the yellow pastel turtleneck. Like there's so many things that it's just so drawn to him. Not to mention just the laugh, the cackle, but then there's the scene. There's the scene where, he's talking about the Quicksilver method, and he owns Dynatox Industries and all this stuff. Which later, I mean, I could just go on and on and on. I just loved Thomas Ian Griffith in this role. Later on, as I continued to research, Not, when internet, blah, 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 but just to know that he was actually younger than Ralph Macchio in this
Right.
film. Still in any film,
Whoa.
like he's just
Yep.
younger than him. But yeah, he was 20, I believe he was 26 or 28, and Ralph Macchio was 29 or 30
Yeah.
when they did Karate
Wow.
Kid 3.
And that baby face. David, what are your thoughts about Terry Silver? Terry Silver, because Thomas Ian Griffith, who I have a man crush on, but Terry Silver
Me too.
specifically.
Same.
Yeah, brother.
I love this choice. I considered him in my villain list, and so I'm so glad he made it on there. I'm holding up the Karate Kid, the Youth
Yes.
Karate Kid Part 3 novelization.
Oh,
Oh,
But-
that must make him so much better.
What a great! I mean, there's so much. He mentioned the fashion. Mason Storm and Hard to Kill. I think maybe
Yeah.
pretty well model off
Yeah.
of that character visually anyway, with the ponytail and the jacket and the tight jeans. But the psychological warfare on top of all of it, where he turns Daniel against Mr. Miyagi, like I to this day cry at that scene where he's got Daniel so wound up that when Mr. Miyagi comes to his door and they have this confrontation and Daniel yells at Mr. Miyagi, and the look on Mr. Miyagi's face just crushes me. And that's all
give me
Terry Silver.
goosebumps. Give me
Yeah,
goosebumps.
it's he's got such a. It's weird though because he gets so much to do. Like gets the big stuff. Like he's sitting in the hot tub with the towel around his neck and around his waist and his arms out and just
Milo,
like on that
my
giant
picture.
cell phone and like just screaming huge stuff into the cell. He's like, Johnny, we're gonna do that. And then same guy is like acting like he is a deferential sort of military veteran in Mr. Miyagi's backyard to the end where he's doing the Bruce Lee noises mockingly. I mean, it's just like he gets a lot to do in that movie and is really memorable.
Yeah.
His film debut too, but like to step into
wow.
such a huge thing. I think he did a little bit of soap stuff. He's a New York actor. And they didn't know that he was originally just supposed to be a toxic waste guy. But then when they found out that Thomas Ian Griffith is actually a martial artist, that's when they rewrote it and added in all that karate stuff.
Yeah.
So
I love his ki too. Like, is that what you call it? Like the noise?
Yeah.
It's so distinct. He would go
he's
like hasta, hasta, hasta.
Diallo does a really good impression, and actually Diallo, your thoughts?
Yeah, like Karate Kid 3 is like a weird one because it's like it's the least of the movies, but
careful
I
with
think
what you say.
kind of what you guys are kind of what you're talking about. It has like the most heart, and it has a very special place in my heart. Like I love that movie so much. I do think it falls short in some areas, but the parts that it excels in, like really excels in. And I watched it a million times, and that I was doing that part where he's like, "Whoa!" Because we always, whenever we watch that part, we just start laughing because it's so random, but it's also so good, right?
The movie's kind of racist too. There's some racism.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was the 80s.
It's the 80s.
But yeah, it was the 80s. Like, welcome. And I always love the kata that Daniel does at the very end. That's my. He's like freaking out. I'm like, what's he doing?
Kata's
that
great.
stuff. I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it more than I just love it. Anyway, so yeah, I love that movie. And yeah, Terry Silver, he's great. I still haven't watched the last season of Cobra Kai yet, so no spoilers. But
Everyone dies at the end. Everyone dies at the end.
He's a great villain, and it's a great and the way that they pulled him in to the last movie of the franchise which and still making it feel like organic was pretty brilliant. So yeah, that's great pick.
Corey, how about you? What are your thoughts on Terry Silver in Karate Kid Part 3?
Yeah, no, Karate Kid Part 3 is great. He's great. I probably have more affection for Karate Kid Part 2. It holds a special place in my heart because when I first saw it, I still remember seeing it in the theater. And I first saw it, I was like, oh, this movie takes place immediately after the first one. And I was like, I think I was old and like young enough to be like, this is the first time I'm seeing that, but old enough to also realize the process of making a film that they didn't film it like immediately right after, but yet they went and they sort of, sort of recreate. Like again, no,
Yeah.
it was this in my head. I was like, oh, this is huge. It takes place right after.
Right.
So I loved part 2, and then I was excited to see part 3, of course, and I very much enjoyed part 3. But then the franchise never sort of stuck with me as I went forward in life. It was just never one of those franchises that I went back and rewatched a lot. But he was great. I mean, Terry, he always in my head, I was always like, oh, that's cool. And then when Zach and I, are reviewing vampires for the Carpenter Factor, and he's the main he's the best part of that damn movie.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I didn't even realize.
Force, excessive force too is a good word.
Well, excessive
and he's
force
such a great actor. But as a kid, I didn't realize that. Yeah, the vampire. When I watched vampires for the first time, I didn't realize that was Terry Silver. Like as a kid, that's how much he can sort of change in everything in his roles and whatnot. But yeah, it's great. I mean, he was a great villain. He just always will stick out in my head from childhood.
Yeah, I will say so. Terry Silver is one of the most iconic characters in the Karate Kid franchise. There would be no Kreese if it wasn't for Terry Silver. We didn't find that out until the trilogy and the end of the trilogy. However, there would be no Kreese without Terry Silver, and that's fact in part 3. Thomas Ian Griffith is as to quote Corey, is a smoke show. I love that guy. If you've never seen Excessive Force, go out and watch Excessive Force now. Pause this episode, go watch it, and then come back because he is brilliant in it. But Terry Silver is such a maniacal jerk, and that's what you want in a villain. You want to see this character get his comeuppance. Not every villain is always like the cool one. Sometimes the villain is better than the hero. In this case, he's the perfect villain because you hate him so much.
Zach, I want to interject some. I think you bring up a good point. A lot of times, Diallo, I'm sure you'll attest to this, as far as like screenwriting 101 goes, you always want your villain to not think that they're the villain, to think that they're the hero of the story. I mean, Darth Vader, he thinks he's bringing security to his, galactic empire. But I think Terry Silver is the opposite of that, and proof that you can write a fun villain that is just purely evil and gleefully villainous,
right?
And I think I think Terry Silver's a good representation of how to do it, and make it still fun, make it still semi-realistic, make it still just not weak and cheesy. But he's actually a fun villain that is a villain for villain's sake.
Agreed. Yeah. So I think Terry Silver is a great pick. I want to keep the ball rolling, and Corey, roll into your choice of your favorite 80s villain.
Yeah, me and Diallo are on the same tip because I'm going with a comic book villain, just because I read a lot of comics as a kid.
Okay.
And one of the comics that I read religiously were the TMNT, the black and white TMNT comic books from Mirage Studios. I did not watch the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon because that was cheesy. I was already seeing my boys disemboweling, the Foot Clan. The Foot Clan were not robots in the comic book. They were people. And my favorite villain as a kid was Oroko Saki, a.k.a. the Shredder, but I am specifically talking about the Mirage comics from, I believe it was like 1984.
Yeah, so this is a really, again, another pick that is very out of left field. And I will, obviously, I'm putting these images up on our YouTube. And I will remind people, if you're listening to this on the audio, go to our YouTube channel and watch the 80s Kids Unite episode, because we'll throw some images up of these characters that we're talking about. And again, I have to stress characters, because some of you might go, oh, but he's more of a hero. No, we're talking about the character from this particular thing. By the way, I'm going to meet the guy.
Yeah, that talks like that.
Yeah, someday I'm going to meet the guy who sounds just like that. And he's going to be like, how'd you know I sound like that? Like,
he almost sounds like Uni from
Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons, yeah. So,
which is just Frank Welker.
Right. Paul, what are your thoughts on the Shredder from TMNT Comics?
No, I love it. I didn't know that it went back to 84. Is that what you were saying, Corey?
Yeah.
Like 80? Was it? Eastman was one of the artists, I think, right?
No, yeah, Kevin Eastman was the artist. Peter Laird was the writer, and then Kevin Eastman went on to go buy Heavy Metal, the magazine.
That's
and I think
right.
he married Julie Strain and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's a story there.
Wow.
There's a story there.
Yeah. Especially if you like those Andy Sedaris films.
Rest in peace, Julie Strain.
Day of the Warrior. I like Shredder. I'm not as familiar with him from the graphic novel, even though I remember my brother Jonathan having the graphic novels. I don't know that he had the black and white that you're referencing, but I remember Shredder looking definitely more vicious and meaner. And that's something I always thought was pretty cool. Had I known he was disemboweling, Terry Silver oppositions, then I think that would have definitely hooked me, to see, because I preferred horror comics. Like I was an Alan Moore Swamp Thing guy. Like that was my. So I really liked that, but no, I love that pick. I think that's awesome.
It's a good pick. Yeah.
Actually, I'll go ahead.
I was going to say the movie version is a good amalgamation of the comic book and the cartoon. I think they probably it's like 51% the comic book. They make him a little bit more serious. Yeah. And in the comic, he's got like this red tunic on, and they brought that into the movie.
Yeah.
But then past that, it's just But
well, I'll say this. So I was introduced to Maker's Mark by Super Shredder. So that was a good time.
We're gonna maybe save that for a Patreon exclusive Legends of the Territories. Diallo, what are your thoughts on Shredder? TMNT's Shredder, comic book Shredder.
He actually was gonna be a pick of mine.
Of course he was.
I'm glad I didn't pick him, and I'm glad Corey picked him and expressed it in a way that I would have never expressed it, because it's funny to me how, Corey, you're always like, I never watched the cartoon, and I'm like, I'm older than you. I was in high school when that came out, and I was like, I watched it every morning. Or
I was personally offended by that cartoon.
Yeah, yeah. But I also get it. Like if I had. It was like I knew Ninja Turtles, the cartoon, and then I kind of went back and I saw the comics, and I recognized that there was a difference, and I've seen them, but that wasn't my first experience, so I don't have that same reaction. But yeah, I was gonna pick Shredder because he's he's just kind of like iconic, villain martial arts, and I think the way that you expressed him, Corey, is actually fitting, because he is. That's the only time he's been as imposing as I think he was intended to be, because he's always he's never fulfilled his potential since then. And I liked him in everything I watched him in, but he's just got all these blades and stuff all over, and he just kind of stands there kind of like Darth Vader does. He doesn't really do a lot, But he should be slicing people up. He should be shredding people.
That's his name,
yeah, bro. Should be shredding.
It's in the name.
Shokusugi would have made a good split or a good shredder. Do you think Shokusugi would have made it?
Totally.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, totally.
Shredder.
Agree. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Paul, real quick, you were it was when you were offline. I'd mentioned that for my hero, you called out two of my hero picks by accident, and I had Sho Kasugi and Jinx both as my backups.
No way!
Yeah, I was gonna go with Sho Kasugi, but
David, how about you? David, what are your thoughts on Shredder?
I love it as a choice. I've never read the comics. I've just sort of heard of them, and their inspiration or with Daredevil and the Frank Miller run and all that. And so I've always been intrigued by it, but never sought them out. So I never got to see that sort of pure version. But I can picture, of course, the cartoon version in the 90 film. But great choice, and makes me want to check out those comics all the more. So I got some things on my list from this. I need to see the Fist of the North Star animated feature. I love the idea that is from the 80s. And I got to find these turtle comics.
Yeah, you
the
do.
nice thing is they're very easy to find. I don't know. I can't remember. I think maybe it's IDW has the license, but they've reprinted the Mirage old comics. And honestly, you can probably just get the first trade. That's Shredder's the main villain of that one. After that, it kind of gets a little bit goofy, kind of like the cartoon. Like the cartoon isn't
Mhm.
so far off from the comics. It's just the first trade was much more violent and much more like I mean the turtles fuck Shredder up on the. It's almost like the movie, except very much more violent. Like I mean, Leonardo jumps across and slices his chest, and he's like
Yeah.
standing there, like literally blood's like coming down. Like they use their weapons the way that they're supposed to be used in the comic book.
I
Do you
mean, they
think
were
there's a
ninja.
thing where, like, when their edges got curvier or rounded, they got goofier and softer? Because in the
Yes.
graphic novels, they're kind of like a harder edged.
Yeah,
Their
and this is
shape
when
to
they
their
had,
head.
and they all had red bandanas. Like each one of them, they all had red bandanas. They hadn't
Yeah,
done the whole color thing because they did that for the cartoon.
Right. Right.
yeah, that was very Captain Planet-y of them to do.
Yeah, yeah,
I will
Captain
keep
Planet.
my thoughts short on this, but I will say I love this choice. I echo what everyone has already said. I am with you, Corey, 100%. I feel like the comics are the place I want to live and remember the turtles for where they should be. I feel like that's the turtles I grew up with. Riding my bike to the comic book store and buying the newest episode every time it came out. And Shredder was an imposing figure. Then he got clearly watered down for a younger audience, which is understandable. It's all good. But I love that choice, and Shokasugi under that mask would have been wonderful. And yeah, to this day, those blades are just so intimidating. It's wonderful. I'm gonna go into my pick, final pick of this episode, and say it is a character. I said earlier about a villain should be a dark and not necessarily someone that the maybe you think is cool, but I think this character is cool to a lot of people. As bad as he is probably more liked than he is disliked. And I am going into the cartoons of the 80s because we've yet to go into a cartoon of the 80s. I'm talking specifically about Storm Shadow from GI.
I knew it, buddy. I knew that you were
I'm
gonna have to
glad
pull
that
him.
was going to be my first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was gonna
So
be my
I mean,
first
Snake
pick,
Eyes
yeah.
and Storm Shadow were like literally both like my number ones, but I was like, other people are gonna get
Yeah.
them. But all I gotta say, Zach,
Exactly.
Excalibur.
you took the words right out of my mouth. So Diallo is holding up the amazing figures, the Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes. So I will say that Storm Shadow is, obviously a villainous Cobra character, but I think people liked him more than disliked him. I think he was just awesome across the board. When they turned him face, I was like, why? Just keep him a villain. You don't need to make him a hero. He had an epic battle against Spirit in a multi-part series for the Mass Device. It was a great, respectful fight that they had, and at the end of it, they went their separate ways. So Spirit was on my short list of heroes to put in the on that side.
Same.
He
Girl,
whooped,
same.
he whooped Quick Kick's ass in the Excalibur episode, practically
I was
breaking.
gonna ask. Quick Kick just kind of jobbed to him. I mean, he was second tier to even. I mean, obviously to Snake Eyes, but he was second tier. I was like, he must have fought Storm Shadow and probably got his ass whipped. That happened, right?
He did. So he got his ass whooped in Excalibur, and as Corey said earlier, Excalibur. Is iconic because Storm Shadow gets the Excalibur sword and then all hell breaks loose. You got to watch that episode of GI Joe. I'll put the links of that in the show notes. Actually, you guys can all check that out. But
Or listen to our breakdown and review of the movie Excalibur that we did for Robert Ortiz. And I think Zach said Excalibur, like Storm Shadow, minimum 100 times that episode.
yeah, I had to go there. I'm not talking. He was really well written by Larry Hama in the comic books from Marvel. We're not going to talk about the movie that came out a few years ago because I think it's terrible. His specifically Storm Shadow, well, and Snake Eyes too, but Storm Shadow is an iconic character to me. David, let's go to David first. David, what are your thoughts on Storm Shadow from GI Joe?
I am embarrassingly unfamiliar with the Joe. I mean, I can picture it, but I didn't watch it. I
Wow,
know.
did you have the so you didn't have the figure? You didn't grow
I
up
Turn
with
actually,
his station off.
I know. Yeah. If it makes any difference, I did have a figure. I had the smaller ones. I'm not sure who
three and
gave
three
them to
quarters?
me. Yeah, yeah. So I believe I had that. So I'm familiar in that regard, and so I'm sure I used that figure to, play Big Trouble in Little China as I
Of
was
course you.
want to do, but I didn't actually watch G.I. Joe. It's a gap. It's a
It's
crime.
okay. You're gonna have. I'm gonna make you watch the Excalibur episode and make
Oh,
up
all
for it
right.
because I think you'll be
My penance. Yeah.
pleasantly surprised. Paul, let's talk about your ninja love of ninjas. Storm Shadow. Your thoughts on Storm Shadow?
I love Storm Shadow. I think it's a really cool pick. It's a real sexy pick. Uh, I love GI Joe. Storm Shadow wasn't my favorite Cobra villain, but I always respected him. Like I always knew that if
Yes.
Storm Shadow was there, stuff, shit was gonna get done, and like there
Yeah.
was gonna be some serious cliffhanger moment where it's like, oh, commercial break, like no, what's gonna happen? And Storm Shadow upped the seriousness in a way. Like you rarely saw him bumbling like you would the Dreadnoks, or or even Cobra Commander, who just kind of became more and more of a buffoon
Right.
as they introduced Serpentor. And so, but with Storm Shadow, he was rarely made to look silly.
Right.
And I think that, it happened sometimes, but of all the villains, probably made to look the least silly.
In a world of cartoons, he kept it pretty real. Like he didn't really
Yeah, he
deviate
kept
from
it
the.
serious.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and so I always loved that. And I was obsessed with ninjas. I guess I still kind of am, but I had a lot more Storm Shadow figures than I did Snake Eyes. And there was one in particular. It might have been like his winter getup or
Yes.
something. The GI Joes almost started to turn into Barbies at this point, right? Because there was like all these variations.
Yeah.
But there was this one of Storm Shadow where he had like a real, like an open hooded
hood
ninja outfit, and he had almost like little. It was white and gray.
Yeah, those black marks on them. Yeah, that was when he turned
awesome.
That was when he turned face. That was when he turned good.
but he still was really cool.
Awesome though.
You're an enabler.
I liked just babyface Storm Shadow at the time. Okay, I just thought it was a cool outfit.
I mean, I think that's what everyone expected. They loved that. It was a logical end game for that character. Diallo, how about you? Diallo, what are your thoughts on Storm Shadow? Clearly, you love him because you got a figure of him. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. It's when he first came out, I don't know. It's kind of like, the foil to Storm Shadow. I think it's interesting just because I'm kind of thinking about this now. Usually in the comics, like the hero is kind of represented by the light, and the villain is represented by the dark. And it's kind of flipped here, and even with his name though, with the Shadow, Storm Shadow, there, it's like, but I like that whole idea, just like the visually of him, the white. Because like again, ninjas were always like dressed in black, so that was like a cool variation. He was just cool, And I used to read the comic books at the time, and that was just like Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes was just like epic. The still at GI Joe number 21, where it was like the silent episode. I think Storm Shadow had like kidnapped Scarlet or something, and Snake Eyes goes in and arrests. It's just that those two, it's just iconic, right? And I always obviously loved the cartoon, but I was always disappointed that he was always pitted against Spirit or Spirit or Freedom.
Freedom's his eagle.
Yeah, Spirit. Freedom's the eagle. Yeah. I was always disappointed that they were always pitted against each other and not like, because I was like, why is it Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes? Like they're
multicultural.
But, anyway,
They had one fight, by the way.
I guess so.
I believe they only had one major fight in the series, and it was when they were like these weird kind of Cro-Magnon people that lived up on a mountain.
There's a great I think Zach in Resolute, G.I. Joe Resolute. There's a great Snake Eyes Storm Shadow showdown in there that I think they were trying to fan service, give us what we wanted. I'm kind of with both Diallo and Paul. I loved the comics and everything like Diallo. I was reading those. But in the cartoon, I always wanted him to be fighting Snake Eyes and not Spirit, and I'm just because it just seemed like the natural thing. Although I did like Spirit, I just in the comics sort of informed me of who should be fighting, whom. Right. But I think Paul put it to words that I never realized, but I when he was saying it, I realize it now. It's like, I loved Major Blood, but then when he was goofy, I didn't like him. I love Zartan and the Dreadnoughts, but when they're goofy, I don't really like them. Right. I don't like Dr. Mindbender when he's goofy, but for some reason, even though there are exceptions, for the most part, Storm Shadow was treated very seriously. And like Paul was saying, like when he came on the screen, I knew that actually the Joes might have a little bit of a challenge ahead of them in whatever the objective was, because unlike Major Blood, Storm Shadow's not gonna go ooh and drop it, drop the thing or something stupid.
He didn't drop Excalibur.
Yeah, so I was just like, I was like, yeah, Storm Shadow's freaking awesome, and he's kind of, he's scary. So like, as a kid, I'm like, he could actually maybe get the job done. So he's actually a viable threat to my boys, the Joes. But yeah, I always wanted to see him fight Snake Eyes, and then in the comics, I just like Paul, I kind of popped for that the face look. I didn't really care if he turned face, but I liked that look. I liked that hood. I liked the sort of the baggy-ish kind of, he had like more layers on and like more like ropes and things like to do.
Yeah, ropes. Did he have juicy ropes?
He had juicy ropes. He had them juicy ropes. And Diallo, do you remember they did another issue of the Silent, but they did it with Storm Shadow, and he was wearing that outfit, and it was obviously later, and it was another whole Silent issue, which was obviously an homage to the one previous. But Storm Shadow was fighting these red ninjas that were kind of trying to break into like his awesome New York loft apartment, but the whole issue was Silent, and he was like, threw his blade through the door and got one.
I was out of G.I. Joe by that point. Okay. And it's a sort of like, again, it like, kind of talking about when he turns face. That's later issues where I just
much later.
I'm cool.
Yeah. But they did 50, I think. Yeah. They did reproduce that Silent issue, but with him. But in the comics, like when they're fighting random ninjas, like they get killed. Like he slices and dices them. It's great.
Was there a Storm Shadow that was orange and purple?
No, you're thinking of that was part of the Ninja Force.
Yeah, Night Stalkers or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, that was a different guy.
Yeah. So if y'all want to watch some really creepy or crappy G.I. Joe, go to watch the final season 3 of G.I. Joe. It's the Sunbow series, not the Sunbow, it's the Deke series.
Yeah.
It's when everything just goes really bad. But for just pure cheese, for homage, I want to wrap up this episode, though, with the 5 of us by just putting it out to you, listeners and watchers. What are your favorite villains and heroes of martial arts from the 80s? Let us know in the comments, social media, et cetera, et cetera. This is a show, 80s Kids Unite, that's fueled by patrons. So on our Patreons, our patreon.com/podcastingafterdark and patreon.com/$2 late fee, you can join the fun on there and support the shows, Podcasting After Dark, $2 late fee, Territory Marks, TV Obscura, et cetera, et cetera. You can support the shows and be a part of the discussion. You choose the topics. Robert Ortiz chose said topic. I think it's amazing that we didn't cover certain iconic characters from the
Snake
80s.
Eyes.
I mean, yeah, we didn't, like you said, Jean-Claude Van Damme, David, Chuck Norris didn't come up. I think Diallo's very happy about that.
I thought that was going to be your villain, actually.
But, but he did. No, it's a joke.
Never a villain.
But, there are so many, like Ralph Macchio didn't come up. But look, here's the thing. What is relatable to some people might not be to others. So if it's something that you love, That's all good. I'm going to do a cheap little plug because the guy sent me a copy of this. He wrote, it's called Daylight Ninja. It's by Brad Walker. It's haiku inspired by American Ninja. So
I was going to pick Joe Armstrong as one of my picks, too.
I mean,
Joe
there you go.
Armstrong.
There's the
Excellent.
embodiment of Snake Eyes before he got his throat slashed and couldn't talk, in my opinion. But one haiku is an awkward goodbye, an unimpressed male parent, discipline previewed. So I think that's a good way to wrap up the episode by saying, here we are in the 80s. We had our heroes, we had our villains, we had our yin to our yang. Paul London's going, what the hell was that? If you
He just did a ninja mind trick on me. I'm like,
How about I got one more. Smooth, sleazy pink tie. Malfactors broker deal. Business finalized. I think our business is finalized here on 80s Kids Unite. It's haiku.
I don't understand what's happening.
I have no
no
idea. either.
ninja speaks that way.
But Brad Walker, thank you. Ninjas shouldn't speak at all, but that's a whole other story.
And if they do speak, they should say Excalibur.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. See you next month on 80s Kids Unite.
Woo!
80s Kids Unite is brought to you by Hungry Hungry Hippos, the loudest tabletop game in history. And by Nickelback, Zach's favorite band. If you'd like to suggest topics for this show, go to the Patreon of either $2 Late Fee or Podcasting After Dark, or both. All links are in the show notes. We love you.